Gleeful anticipation, that feeling of excitement that a change is coming. A change that will bring with it blessing and joy and life. That is what we need. That is what we need. Its Spirit to fill us, to guide us, so that it can change us and so change the world. For indeed, that Spirit does, almost miraculously. For it is a gleeful anticipation that fills little boys and little girls on Christmas Eve, and it changes them just like a can of shaken up soda, making it impossible for them to sit still, impossible for them to sleep. Gleeful anticipation is what makes them jump out of bed at 5 a.m. on Christmas morning. Now, trying to get an 8-year-old up at 5 a.m. any other day of the year is almost impossible, unless they're filled with gleeful anticipation, which makes it almost impossible for them not to be up at 5 a.m. on Christmas. It changes things. Gleeful anticipation. For a child, change is almost always good. Change in youth brings new freedoms and new joys. You can stay up later. You can learn to play the ukulele. You can go to church camp and learn about the Wild West. You can learn to ride a bike, go on a date, drive a car. In childhood, change leads to greater independence, mobility, choice. It's a beautiful thing. But there comes a time, say sometime after age 21 or so, that change takes on a different tenor. It begins to bring loss of health, loss of mobility, loss of that independence and choice won in childhood. And that is when, of course, we begin to resist change, to fear change, to even deny that change is occurring. And the consequence of that attitude towards change, it lacks faith. And it has tragic consequences. Because the truth is, without change, there is no breath. Without change, there is no life. And no one exemplifies that better than Martha Mason. I'd like to introduce you to her. So Richard, could you please play the video?
She always cares. She always will be the one to check to see that you're okay, you're sick. Hey Martha, how are you?
Many years ago, after she was stricken with polio, we got acquainted. Hi, Martha.
Martha's personality is unique.
It's always an enjoyable time when I stop by to see her because she's always so cheerful.
She's probably the most remarkable person I've ever met.
The doctor said, do you think you can live with being inactive, being a vegetable, being in an iron lung for the rest of your life? And the report is that no, but I think I can live above that.
I think I've heard her say that pity is an ugly word. Even the word is ugly.
Martha and her home is the hub of a lot that goes on in the community. Okay, start game.
I'm just getting warmed up.
You are only internet is like living in a library, page down, page down.
We are the Blanton Family Singers, and we're going to do a concert here for Martha. We three kings of Orient are.
None of us are exempt from things that would make us extraordinary people if the world knew the story.
You can go ahead and stop that. If you're interested in learning more about Martha, there's a New York Times article on the welcome table in the back of the sanctuary. But at 11, Martha came down with the polio virus, and it weakened her lungs, as you saw, so much that on her own, she can only breathe for about an hour each day. And then she loses the strength to do so. Her only hope was the iron lung. That iron lung surrounds her entire body, except for her head, and it changes in pressure within the tube, allowing the air to rush in and then to exit her lungs. You heard what the doctor said, projecting his hopelessness upon Martha, asking, could she stand to live inactive, like a vegetable, in an iron lung for the rest of her life? And her response at 11 was no. But I believe I can live above that, above the level of his hopelessness. What makes Martha unique, one friend said, is her absolute love of learning. She constantly wants to learn new things, to see new things, experience new things, talk to new people. She wants to know what they think, what's going on in their lives. She may be stuck physically in that iron lung, she said, but her spirit is not stuck in there at all. Polio indeed changed Martha's life in many ways that we would not. It made her physically less mobile. It limited her choices, her freedoms. But it did not change her childlike ability for gleeful anticipation about the future, about what's going to come next in her life, the next challenge, the next change. And that spirit, born of an indomitable faith, is the spirit that gives new life. The spirit that Jesus talks about. The new life after tragedy, new life after loss, after hardship. Martha's attitude, her ability to hold gleeful anticipation towards life, even when it was not fulfilling what we would hope necessarily. Her gleeful anticipation towards the challenges that faced her, her love of learning, growing, expanding her thinking, made her a top student. She graduated first in her high school class. The teachers would come by the house. And then she enrolled in Wake Forest University, arriving at campus in the back of a bakery truck. Her iron lung in the back of a bakery truck, that is all that could transport her. She listened to lectures in her dorm room by intercom, long before there were computers. In 1960, she graduated from Wake Forest, #1 in her class, with a degree in English because she had a hope of becoming a writer. And 43 years after she graduated, in 2003, Martha realized that dream and published a memoir entitled Breath. Breath. Life within the rhythm of an iron lung. After college, Martha hosted dinner parties. You saw some of those. The Red Hatter Club, church groups, book clubs. People, you see, wanted to gather around Martha. They were inspired by her positive, curious, joyful spirit. That is why they sought her out. In her life, they noticed something that was missing in their life. Almost unbelievable. Her spirit changed them, the pattern of their day, so that they could drop by her home. Her Spirit gave them new life. It was the same as people sought out Jesus, attracted by his Spirit, which gave them new life. What if we had a little bit more that Spirit in us, in our world? What if we, like she, with joyful anticipation, were drawn to each other out of an insatiable desire to learn from one another, to expand our experience, our thinking, our understanding? Well, it would be like Ezekiel, breathing the breath of God into that valley of dry bones, reviving them, putting life back into them. For that is exactly what happened to Martha. That Spirit, as much as that iron lung, gave her the breath of new life, which allowed her to live above her doctor's hopelessness, which allowed her to rise above her limitations and reach her dreams. And in a godly turn of events, she who could not breathe on her own, breathed the breath of life into others. Too often our world seems hopelessly entrenched in a lifeless valley of isolationism, partisanism, radical religious orthodoxy, all of which are a reflection of an exorbitant fear of change, an exorbitant fear of the unknown. And it dries our bones. It leaves us in a hole, in a valley. If we are to raise ourselves up from that valley, as individuals and as a world, we must adopt a more childlike, yet enormously courageous, gleeful embrace of change, an openness of learning, to see one another as having something to teach us. And so we celebrate today the students in our midst. For if we are to be disciples, we must be students. We must have a student-like spirit. For that is the only way we will ever grow into the image of God. Amen.